afternoon, everyone. My name is Libehela and I'm a first-year student at Ashesi University studying business administration. Now, let's kickstart this with defining ethnography. So ethnography, as per Web Center for Social Research Methods, is defined as the study of people in their own environment through methods such as participatory observation and face-to-face interviews. I would like us also to define research tools. These are defined as anything that becomes the means of collecting information for your study. Now, I would like us to analyze these methods of research using a case scenario. So this is a case scenario of students in Ashesi University, and they have a problem with transportation. They cannot go to and from campus at their convenient time because there's a shortage of buses that takes them to and from campus when they want. So right now, I would like us to dive into the three main research tools, which are basically observational shadowing, depth interviews, and immersion. So firstly, I would like us to explain observational shadowing. Observational shadowing is defined as watching people closely and quietly in secret in order to learn how they react to a given circumstance or problem. But we have to realize that one does not have to interfere with the research subject, as this would change the way people behave. Let us make an example. You can sit somewhere in the dark or somewhere where people cannot watch you, and you watch closely how students wait to go out of school out of campus to wherever that they want to run their errands. And you see their reaction as they sit in the scorching Accra sun, waiting for the bus to take them from school. Sometimes they even have to walk all the way down the hill to Berikusu to wait for taxis. So as a researcher, you wait there and you sit watching closely how they react to this given problem. But you have to make sure that they do not see you, because once they see you, they get to change and they get to be more pretentious, which is not right for your research. So I would like us to dive into the advantages of this. So firstly, it is very simple, and also it gives you more exact results. However, it has some disadvantages, which is it can be very time consuming and it can be very boring. Sitting there waiting to see how people react. Sometimes they take like 2 hours or 4 hours waiting for one bus, and you have to wait there to get your results. Moving on, I would like to dive into depth interviews. So depth interviews, as you can see, is defined as a qualitative research technique which is used to conduct intensive individual interviews where number of respondents are less and research is focused on a specific product, technique, situation, or objective. This is according to Pathfinder International Tool Series. So correspondingly, allow me to take you to some important things that you have to consider when interviewing people. If you want to go to these students and interview them to find out how the problem of transportation affects them, firstly, you have to consider rich input, feedback, and opinions. So this means that it has to be a conversation. An interview shouldn't just be passive, you asking questions and getting answers, but instead it has to be a conversation between two people that allows a rich input and that allows feedback as well as opinions. Now, we also have to consider types of questions. There's a very big difference between direct and indirect questions. There's a very big difference between specific and non-specific questions. So when interviewing the students, you have to make sure that your question is very specific in order to get a very specific result. Also, there's a very big difference between questions and statements. So try as much as you can to structure your question in a way that it remains a question instead of a statement. So some questions that we have to avoid. We have to avoid questions like leading questions. Do not, as much as you can, when you want to interview these students on how a problem affects them, try as much as you can to avoid questions that are leading. Make sure that you ask direct questions that are not leading in order to get a very direct answer. Also, avoid as much as you can to ask personal or embarrassing questions. For example, how has staying here affected, suppose, your relationship or something? It's very personal, so try as much as you can to make sure that your questions remain professional. Lastly, try as much as you can to avoid complex questions. These are just students that have a problem with transportation, so make sure that you keep your questions as simple as you can. Right now, I would like us to dive into how to interview. So Here are students faced with transportation problems. They cannot leave campus when they want because it causes so much inconvenience for them to move all the way from campus to Birakuso to wait for a taxi. Or they have to wait for like 4 hours for the next bus to come to campus. How do you understand that situation? How do you understand and analyze the problem? Okay, so here's how. Firstly, never say usually when you ask a question. Can we make an example of this? Usually when you wait here, how does it affect you? How do you feel sad when you wait here? Instead of saying usually, just say, how do you feel waiting for 2 hours for a bus to come to campus in order to take you to Accra or to take you to Kumasi? These are places in Ghana. Secondly, encourage stories. When you interview someone, try as much as you can to encourage stories. For example, a student might have been faced with a problem whereby a taxi wasn't there on campus and they had to go for this important interview. They had to arrive to their interview sweating because they couldn't just get there on time. So this is a very interesting story, and it can give you a lot of insights from it. Try as much as you can to encourage stories. Also, listen to nonverbal cues. We all know that people, most of the time, they say what they do not mean. And so sometimes body language can speak to us more than words can speak to us. So even if you're listening to somebody when you interview them, make sure that you also listen to their body language. And lastly, one question at a time. I repeat, one question at a time to one person. So this is whereby we try as much as we can to ask one person at a time, to one person at a time. Finally, I would like to take us through immersion. So immersion is basically trying to understand a group, a subculture, setting, or a way of life by getting involved physically into that world. It is used to gain best understanding of a topic by essentially becoming part of that group. This definition was taken from thought.com. So what this means is that we have realized that there's a problem in Ashesi whereby students are lacking enough means of transportation. In order to understand them further, immersion is a very good way to understand exactly how this problem affects them and exactly how this is a problem. For instance, instead of just passively asking them how this affects them or just sitting under the shadow and watching how they react when the bus is not coming, what you can do instead is when sometimes you have to go for an important interview somewhere, sit with them and wait for the bus for like 4 hours and wait with them, immerse yourself in their situation. This way, it helps you understand. You get to experience, you get to have the sun burning you, you get to experience everything that they feel when they're waiting for the car to come. So, some of the advantages of this is that, okay, so here is a typical example of people, of someone immersing themselves with people waiting for the bus. As you can see that they are all waiting here. This is so much better than you asking, how do you feel? Because you get to feel with them and you get to empathize with them because you get to immerse yourself in their situation. So some of the advantages and disadvantages of immersion, they include deeper and better understanding. The more you immerse yourself, the more you take the buses with students to go. Suppose a dean of students, for example, they've been telling him that, okay, here's a problem that we are facing. But the more he immerses himself with the students, he gets to have a deeper and better understanding of how a problem affects the students. And secondly, it can offer a very big life-changing experience. Because you get to immerse yourself and you get to feel with the people, it can be a very life-changing experience. You get to have different views of points. Suppose sometimes initially you thought they were only complaining, but right now, since you've felt what they have been feeling, you get to understand them better. However, it also has some downsides, and this includes that sometimes a person can get so immersed that they fail to go back to reality. And secondly, they can lose focus of the main research papers when they get too involved with the people that they are researching on. So to conclude, I would like to leave you with this quote. It says that research is formalized curiosity. It is poking and prying with the papers, and this is by Zora Neale. What this means is that when you want to research and when you want to understand people better, you poke, you get your hands dirty, you get yourself dirty in order to understand exactly what people, the problem that people are facing. So thank you very much for listening. Stay tuned for the next upcoming D-Lab session. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Once again, my name is Libehela. Thank you very much.